tomorrow sees the start of the serious stuff in the Championship, Justin. It's the final 8 games of the season and it's still all to play for in every section of the table. But the question I keep getting asked, Justin, is who's going up? Because it's all up for grabs there, isn't it? And you could make an argument, couldn't you, that this is the tightest promotion race we've ever had in the Championship. I know last season we also had 3 teams fighting for promotion at this stage, but prior to that, promotion races with the top 2 positions still up for grabs were pretty rare, really, weren't they?
They are rare, and I think if you look at each team in that hunt for the top 2, Burnley, Sheffield United and Leeds, you can make a fair argument for all of them, or you can also criticise them as well. They're not without any critique in that sense, but it is tight. And to be honest, as I say, I don't think any of the 3 teams so far have created a really convincing argument and they are going to win the title or even finish in the top 2. I think it's very balanced. I think it's probably it's all about who's the most unconvincing, maybe. I think Sheffield United have got a really good mental edge where I don't think they're living in the same pressure bubble that Leeds are. That's outside pressure from the likes of us with Leeds, and internal pressure as well, that expectation to be the very best team that they could possibly be, because Leeds are a big club. Burnley just don't score enough goals. And please don't at me with saying that they've scored 1 less than Sheffield United. Burnley stat pad, all right? They've had so many 0-0 draws this season. There's so many games where they've drawn blanks. They are stat padders. They've scored a decent amount of goals against a few teams, but a lot of 0-0s. So as I say, they just don't score enough goals for me, and that's what I say. It's who's the most unconvincing at the moment. There aren't too many weaknesses with these 3 teams, which is probably why they're at the top.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary, really, Justin. There's actually quite a few parallels to last season, really, here, isn't there? You've got 3 teams bunched right together at the top, only one team who are kind of in that nether region between just the automatic promotion race and the playoff race, where they just seem destined to finish 4th no matter
playoff
what.
Gooch, yeah.
Exactly, the playoff gooch. And you've got Leeds top of the league again, and we all know how it ended last season, so they'll be hoping that it's different this time around. But whether it's tighter than last season, I'm not sure. It's definitely one of the tightest we've ever seen in the time that we've been doing this podcast, and possibly ever as well, because, I mean, last season was pretty much the first time we had a proper automatic promotion race in the time that we've been doing this, haven't we, Justin? Let alone a title race. So the fact it's happened 2 seasons in a row where it's still all to play for at the top is great stuff, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And I think this is the main sort of message with this is, yes, you can make the argument that these 3 teams benefit from parachute payments from the Premier League. Yes, we're aware of that. But the entertainment value that we've got now going into the end of the season is really, really high. You've got the potential for Leeds tears if they, quote unquote, fall apart. You've got the potential for Chris Wilder tears and him throwing his dummy out the pram if they fall short. And then you've got Scott Parker, who actually is a very calm and measured person, and there's nothing that we can probably get from that. But nonetheless, if Burnley miss out, they miss out. But from an entertainment point of view, it's a really, really high one, and that's what we've got to really push here. Your team might not be involved in it, but this is exciting. This is really, really exciting for the rest of us.
Yeah, it's great stuff, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of twists and turns in the business end of the season with 8 games to go, ladies and gents, so make sure you stick with us between now and the end of May. But we'll get on to some news from the past few days, Justin, and we were just talking about Leeds United there. One player Leeds United may be without for the majority of their remaining games is Wilfried Gnonto, because he returned to Leeds early from international duty after picking up an ankle injury with Italy under 21s. Now, the full extent of that injury hasn't been confirmed yet, but Gnonto has had a similar injury previously, which kept him out for a month last time. Keep in mind, we're end of March now, so not ideal. And it's really come at the worst possible time, really, hasn't it? Because Leeds, there was talk of him starting in the number 10 role after his substitute appearance against QPR last time out. Brendan Aronson not as been as effective recently. So this would be a big blow if they're without Gnonto for the next month, potentially, Justin.
Let's not be doommongers, Ryan. Patrick Bamford's going to be returning to training. Come on.
Great.
Come on. Let's pick up the mood a little bit here. You know, Paddy B is coming back. Yeah, it's... a player of Wilfried Gnonto's quality, it can be a huge blow. But I think with Leeds, we've got to think what could be worse here. Obviously, Patrick Bamford coming back to full training is a positive. Don't know why I said that. But if we think back to last season, the last March international break last season, that's where Leeds really hit a bump in their pursuit for the automatics, didn't they? They were joint top going into it before several players came back from the international break with injuries and knocks, and then they won through it the last 9 games. So yes, losing a player of Gnonto's quality is hugely significant, but I think the burden is now shared amongst the group. So I do believe that Gnonto can edge tight, nervy games as he has done this season, mainly in the first half of the campaign. I think since Christmas he's really struggled for minutes and form, owing to injuries and knocks, not really helping. But like I said, the reassuring thing, I think the burden is now shared. Ethan Ampadu, I know I make a joke about Patrick Bamford, but Ethan Ampadu is another one who's could be returning to training as well. So that's the more significant news I would really throw in there.
Yeah, well, that's fair, Justin. I think Gnonto's had a bit of a strange season, really, hasn't he? Because at the end of last season, it was Gnonto, Ruta and Somerville. Those were the 3 who you looked at and thought Leeds would do well to keep a hold of them. Gnonto was the one who stayed and has actually ended up being a bit part player this season, which I never really expected. As you mentioned, he's only started 1 league game this calendar year, which is mad, really. And maybe it is partly down to injuries, but I think the main reason he's been left out is because of the form of Manor Solomon and Dan James this season. Those two, particularly James, have been absolutely class. But Gnonto has played at the number 10 role before, and as mentioned, Brendan Aaronson's not been too productive recently. It seemed like an opportunity was finally opening up for Gnonto, and now that may have been taken away, which is a shame for him and Leeds, because they could have really done with a Gnonto in these last 8 games. And he's been a threat off the bench at the very least on plenty of occasions, hasn't he? So if they're missing him for most of these remaining 8 games, like it looks at the moment, might not be the case as once the news actually comes out about what the extent of this injury is. But it would be a great start to the business end of the season for Leeds, would it, Justin?
Well, no, this is what I mean. When you lose a player of his quality, and you make a really good point about Brendan Aronson in that number 10 position really not finding form for the past, what feels like 2 months. He's been quite below par, really. And he has had a big impact in games, Brendan Aronson, in that, for me, he's a player who does keep possession ticking over, but the impact in that final third just isn't enough. Whereas I've
never been too convinced about it.
Yeah, I know you haven't. I think the best summary I could give of Brendan Aronson is he's perfect for the Eredivisie, which isn't the Championship.
I don't know what that means, but I'm nodding along with approval.
Just someone who's very tidy in possession and a little bit lightweight. But I think with Wilfried Gnonto is you do have a player who can make an impact, and I think if you get him in the mood, he's really, really, he can really push on. He's still very young. We've got to bear that in mind as well.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of burden that you can put on him, but he's a player who's got that star edge. If you go back to last season, the bloody transfer drama we covered with him, he's clearly a good player because he attracted a lot of interest from outside and clearly got to him at one point. But he did return from that. He has had an impact since. So. Yeah, it's disappointing. And Leeds don't want to be losing players now because they will be getting flashbacks to this time last season where it did do well this season.
Yeah, you mentioned how young Willie Gnonto is there. I always forget how young he is. You think we always think of Matteo Joseph as a good, young, exciting prospect, Justin. Willie Gnonto's younger than Matteo Joseph.
Yeah.
Which is insane, isn't it? But just because he's been around for so long and been doing the business for Leeds for so long, it's easy to forget how young he is. But yeah, it's going to be a big blow. And it'll be interesting to see how much he does feature for Leeds for the remainder of the season, if he is going to be out for, a month or however long. Let's stick with the theme of injuries, Justin, because Aaron Ramsey is going to miss the rest of the season with Cardiff City. It's because he's undergone surgery on a hamstring injury. Since rejoining his boyhood side in the summer of 2023, he started just 13 league games in 2 entire seasons. Now, he is out of contract in the summer, and it remains to be seen whether he'll stay at Cardiff. But with that being said, Justin, even though we don't know for sure what the future holds for him, what do you think? Has this move got to go down as a failure?
Well, how do you judge a footballer, Ryan? It's whether or not they're available, right? If they're not available, they're not contributing, they're not having an impact. For me, I think this move is a massive failure, and it goes back to what I said when he first signed him. We got a lot of stick for it. It's a long time ago now, but for me, when you're signing a player who has a checkered history with injuries, who's in his 30s, who's at the tail end of his career, when you sign him in the Championship, you're taking a risk. You're taking a massive risk. Whether he's on big wages or not, like I said, players are only useful when they're available. And he's got undoubted quality, but if he's not contributing on the pitch, where is he contributing? Yes, you can argue that he's got experience in the dressing room, but is that experience having an impact on the squad? No, because Cardiff aren't performing very well. So where is the value added here? And then you've got to throw in the factor that Omar Rees is also not experienced. So again, where's the impact? Where's the value? I'm not seeing it. It was a good homecoming story, really, really lovely story. It really was, because I can get caught up in the romance of a youth player coming back to where it all started for him. Derby did it with Chris Riggott back in 2011, 2012, I think. Most listeners will go, well, who the fuck's that? But he was a good homecoming story, and he didn't play a minute for Derby. He was a complete waste of time, and I feel like this has gone the same way.
What a great random reference, Chris Riggott. Wow. I think we said at the time that we thought the reality of this move may turn out to be quite below the thought of the move, and I think it's just turned out to be exactly that, really, hasn't it? I doubt Cardiff are spending as much on wages as people may think with Ramsey. I imagine he's taken a pretty chunky pay cut to move to Cardiff, but I still doubt he's earning a pittance, I'll say that much. And considering the fanfare which came about when this signing first happened, it's far from matched those levels, has it? And unfortunately, the injuries which have dogged his career have come back with a vengeance, haven't they? The thing is, the season prior to him joining Cardiff, when he was at Nice over in France, it seemed like his injury problems were actually behind him. He played 27 of Nice's 38 league games that season, but since going back to Cardiff, the longest run of league games he's had is just 6. Yeah. So you have to say this move has been a failure. If he was fit, he would have undoubtedly been a big player for Cardiff over the last couple of years, but the fact of the matter is, we all know when you sign Aaron Ramsey, you're taking a big risk when it comes to those injury problems which he's had throughout his career.
Yeah, and one thing that we really do need to hone in on here is, yes, Ligue 1 is a top league over in France, but I just don't think it comes with the same intensity that we have in the Championship. That's both in the physical output that players will put in, but also the amount of games you play in a really close proximity of time. We're looking at the business end of the season now. We've got 8 games to play in, looking at the date, 6 weeks. Yeah, you're asking could I do that as a 31-year-old? No, my body will break down. That being said, I'm not an athlete. Actually, there's argument to suggest I am.
Hey, CrossFit's a difficult thing to do, mate.
Exactly, CrossFit is difficult. More on that.
Well, what's the point you're trying to make here?
The point I'm trying to make is, whether you're an athlete or not, the amount of games you're playing in such a short space of time is going to take its toll on your body. And when you've got a bad history of injuries, I just feel that as a recruitment team, you probably look at this and go, strategically, this doesn't make a lot of sense for us. You've got to be cutthroat in these decisions, and Cardiff weren't. And look, as I say, romantic story, lovely story, but looking back now, hindsight is beautiful. It just hasn't worked.
It's probably just it was mainly probably seen as just a PR thing, wasn't it? Let's get Aaron Ramsey back, sell a few more season tickets and what have you. And
can you do that in the Championship?
Yeah, season tickets, I imagine, took a big boost after this move. But
Cardiff City Stadium's on the pretty empty at the moment.
Well, it is now, yeah. That's without a doubt. We've got some more injury news, Justin. This is actually fairly significant, because Plymouth defender Maksym Talovierov is set to miss the rest of the season with a knee injury. He's been one of Plymouth's standout players since signing for the club in January. And, of course, he even scored against Man City in the FA Cup. Now, we were saying on Sunday how big the task is for Plymouth to stay up. This really, really doesn't help things, does it?
Yeah, no, it's a difficult situation. Towering player is Talovierov. He's really bought into the philosophy and really embodied what Muslich is wanting to bring to Plymouth. So him being injured now until the end of the season is a huge blow, because you're asking a lot of Plymouth to claw their way out of relegation trouble. You're asking even more of it now to have one of their better players missing since he came in. So it's one of those things where, when it's raining, it's pouring down at home park, which is frustrating. But have they got players that can step in? Because again, defensively is a position that quality wise they've really, really lacked. Obviously, Lewis Gibson left to Preston in January. Bit of a scenario now.
Yeah, Plymouth's January business was really the thing that was driving their survival chances, wasn't it? Because you had Talovierov, Puhac and Katic, who all signed and have all been really good, to be fair. Talovierov is probably the standout of the bunch. And with him gone, any chances they had of staying up really revolved around him and the other two new signings. So those hopes that we talked about on Sunday of them staying up are somehow even slimmer now. Which is, it pretty much sums up where Plymouth Argyle are at now. And it looks like they may be slowly but surely drifting away from the relegation battle. Justin, before we go on a quick break and talk about some more Championship news, I wanted to quickly touch on the situation at Reading. Now, of course, they're in League One, but it's a story we've been following because they were a Championship side for many years, up until a couple of seasons ago. Well, the latest news is their owner, De Jong, has been given a deadline of the 4th of April to sell the club after he was disqualified under the EFL's owners and directors test. If he doesn't do that, then Reading face potentially being kicked out of the league. So this is more or less it for Reading. They either get sold in the next week and a bit. If they don't, who knows? Scary stuff, Justin.
Yeah, it is. It is scary stuff. It's a worrying time for Reading fans. I can understand why there's so much uncertainty and emotion pouring out on social media because they've been really, really drumming home their story and the fact that they have really got their message across over the past 18 months to nearly 2 years. It's been an extraordinary amount of time. So for them to be in this position now, whilst there is an end in sight, it's an end that, as I say, is really mixed in with a lot of uncertainty. It's a huge risk that they're currently in a very risky situation, goes without saying. So the steps that are under play now are just so astronomical that, it's huge.
Yeah, we know plenty of Reading fans from the time that we've been doing this podcast. So we know straight off the bat how difficult a situation this is. And the main thing here is Reading find an owner, find one who actually cares about the club. And I have seen reports that there are interested parties, which is good. And I always think surely Reading are too big a club to just disappear from existence. So we don't want to take that for granted, and touch wood, that's not the case. But hopefully that's the resolution that will come out of this. But I wanted to bring to the table the tweets that I got a lot of stick for last week because I was praising the EFL on Twitter. I said they've done everything they can to try and resolve the situation because what they've basically tried to do is force De Jong's hands, haven't they? Either he sells Reading and tries to get some money out of the deal, or he gets next to nothing when they're not in the league anymore. So I think the EFL have done well in handling this situation. A lot of Reading fans disagree with me, and they definitely disagree with me. And that's fine if they do, but I think a lot of people don't realise that the EFL's options have been pretty limited throughout this ordeal. They've done everything they legally can to resolve it as well as they can. I think a lot of fans just want to criticise the EFL for the sake of it because they're frustrated. And look, I'm saying that as a Derby fan who, saw my club in a very similar position to Reading 3 years ago. So in time, I have started to realise that actually the EFL isn't the bad guy in this situation. There's always only ever one bad guy in these situations. And in Reading's case, the only bad guy is De Jong. So I stand by what I said in those tweets. I think the EFL have handled this situation very well. And if the worst does happen, God forbid, touch wood, I don't think the EFL deserve to be massively lambasted. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of stick for saying that, but that's what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I think there's potentially an air of reading the room a little bit. I think the EFL are almost inevitably going to come under a little bit of stick, or a lot of stick, because I think that's where the fingers will be pointed. You've got to point your fingers at the establishment sometimes, and that's what Reading fans and fans outside of Reading are doing. So it really is a thankless task from the EFL. You are spot on in the sense that if you're looking for a villain in this story, it is Dai Young, because of his ability to not be a responsible football owner. But I think one thing you've got to really hone in on is the fact that the EFL, when Dai Young was granted the ability to buy Reading, it was under a different regime. It was a regime that was, when I'm trying not to sort of get muddled in potential. I don't want to be beeped out by producer Tom.
The EFL were very different 10 years ago, weren't they?
Very, very different. That was a period of time when accounts were getting approved that shouldn't have been approved, i.e. derbies, Reading, Sheffield Wednesdays, and it all caught up with them under the new regime. Now, they've come down with a bit of an iron fist, if you like, but it's probably for the good of the leagues going forwards. And you are right, the EFL have done absolutely everything they can in this very, very complex situation where there's a lot of legal process and procedures, and therefore communication has to be somewhat limited and very official. Because I've seen some certain tweets saying people from Reading have reached out to the EFL and they've not got anything back. Unfortunately, that's probably not going to happen because of legal process and procedures. So they are in a very difficult position and a thankless position, as I say. But all that can be done now is really, really hone in on the value of Reading Football Club. I think a big reason as to why Derby were picked up was fans were filling the ground. They were filling the ground, and I think what Reading fans can do is start to flood the Madejski again. If it's called the Madejski now, either way,
I know what you mean.
Either way, you've got to really, really make the club look as valuable as it is, and it is a valuable football club because it's at the centre of the community, as all football clubs are. And all we can do is learn from these scenarios, and hopefully this is one of the last ones that we ever go through, as a football community.
Yeah, well, hopefully that'll be the case. And look, hopefully they should get taken over, because if you get things sorted out at Reading, they probably won't be too far off being back in the Premier League at some point in the near future. So I'm sure there'll be Reading fans out there who disagree with what I've said, and that's fine. But, what I would say is, what do you think the EFL should have done instead? I would say the likelihood is that anything that gets suggested is legally something they can't do. So by and large, the EFL have done everything with Reading's best interests at heart. And as we say, the bottom line is hopefully Reading find an owner in the next week and a bit, and we can all forget about this sorry saga and move on from horrible, horrible owners like Dai Young. Justin, let's take a quick break, shall we? After that, we'll talk about some more Championship news from the past week. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. We're doing a news roundup of everything that's happened across the Championship over the past international break. And before we get on to a few more newsy bits, Justin, I wanted to point people in the direction of the Second Tier YouTube channel, where we have my weekly analysis video, which has gone up this week. It's every top goal scorer in Championship history. Where are they now? And while making this video, Justin, I noticed that this season we're actually on course for the lowest goal tally ever for a top goal scorer in Championship history, which just seems mad, doesn't it? The previous low was just 21 goals, which happened on 3 different occasions. Now, Boya Sainz is the current top scorer this season with just 17. The next highest is 15. So it's looking very likely, as things stand, that record is going to be broken, if you can call it a record, the lowest goals ever scored by a top goal scorer in Championship history. But it is also worth remembering that we did our halfway team of the season not long ago, and we were struggling to pick a striker, weren't we? Not many had stood out for us. So what do you think's going on? Are we witnessing the death of your classic number 9 at Championship level? What do you think?
If we are in an era where the number 9 dies, I don't think it's worth carrying on this podcast.
You love your classic number 9s, don't you? Get Lucas Djukovic back in the Champo.
Honestly, it's slightly off topic. Playing Football Manager, I signed one player consistently. It's a guy called Thomas Chori, a Czech striker who's 6'6", 7, I think. Cheat
Thomas
code.
Chory?
Thomas Chory. What's the story, Thomas Chory? That's the chant I made up for him on my FM save.
You made up a chant.
I did, yeah.
For your striker on FM. That's great.
Yeah. But that just exemplifies my love for the number 9. But I think I think a lot of it comes down to system. Some of it comes down to quality. I think, whilst we've still got Kiefer Moore in the Championship now, who is probably the last striker that I can really remember over the past few years, other than your Mitrovic's and Solankis and Ivan Tonys, who are sort of 6'2" plus and able to score 20 goals in a season. It's a very rare thing anyway. But I think it's down to system, because you look at him in isolation, he's struggled to fit into Chris Wilder's system this year, when actually in previous years, Chris Wilder's system suited to having that number 9 because balls are going in the box. You've got a number 10 playing off him, whether that was prior David McGoldrick and Ollie McBurney. But there's a lot of systematic problems there. Not problems, sorry, scenarios. Whereas as I say, I think system-wise things have changed quite considerably. Teams are moving away from sort of the wide areas a little bit, and there's a lot more sort of intricacy going through the middle. I think Derby are operating a little bit as a false 9 system. Again, they're a team who have played balls in the box under Paul Warne and John Eustace, where Jerry Yates is very much a floating number 9, where he's around the box, and then Marcus Harness is supporting. So, and he's benefited with goals. So, I think it's down to system, but I do think it's down to quality as well. But this deserves a 10-part investigative series just to make sure we can avoid losing the number 9.
Okay, you can look into that, Justin. I'm not sure where it's going to air, because it's definitely not airing on this podcast. But yeah, that's a very interesting take on it, Justin. I've got a more simple take, and I think it's just a bad year for out-and-out strikers, really. I think if Josh Sargent was fully fit for the entire season, then I reckon he would have easily got 20-plus goals. Josh Madger may have done it as well if he didn't get injured. Hadji Wright probably would be there or thereabouts as well if he wasn't injured for several months.
They're not your classic number 9s, though. And it depends on the conversation whether or not you're asking.
Are you talking about target men?
I'm talking about players who, probably am,
Yeah. When I think of number 9s, I just think of strikers, really, not necessarily.
You're a bit woke with your approach to number 9s.
Maybe classic. I am. Maybe just utter woke nonsense. But when I think of number 9s, I don't necessarily think of big, burly, battering rams. But I think it also has to be pointed out that it isn't helped by the fact that none of the top 3 have really had a settled striker all season. I know Pirro scored plenty of goals at Leeds, but he started the season on the bench. Sheffield United are him flicking between the 3 or 4 that they've got, and Burnley have mostly gone with Zian Fleming, who's traditionally a number 10. But yeah, interesting that no one's really took the bull by the horns when it comes to goals this season. I mean, Boy Sainz looked like he was going to piss Golden Boot, didn't he? And then decided not to score for about 3 months. So that goes to show the standards of top goal scorers this season. But yeah, if you fancy looking back on Championship years gone by and previous top scorers, watch the video on the Secretary YouTube channel right now. Very close to 10k subscribers. Justin, it's going pretty well there. So make sure you get involved and get us up to, how many figures is that? 5 figures for subscribers.
We want 6 by the end of the season.
That's ambitious, I'll tell you that much. Let's get back on to some news from the Championship, Justin, because Swansea caretaker boss Alan Sheehan is expected to remain in charge for the rest of the season. He's been in charge of 5 games so far at the Swans, winning 2, losing 2 and drawing 1. Swansea will then reassess their managerial situation in the summer. The right move for you, Justin Peach?
It definitely is. Swansea need to be settled. I think Alan Sheehan is a good coach. I think a good important point actually is Swansea need to be settled because whilst points wise they are in a better position than most, but they could drop into the relegation fight in this final 8 games. Wouldn't rule it out, but I think it's unlikely. So having a settled scenario is really important. Alan Sheehan is a good coach, a very good coach who I think will stabilise things and hopefully out himself into contention for the job full time, because he's one person that I really do rate. His record as a caretaker or interim coach in charge of Swansea is very, very good. He was very good last season and he's been very good this season, albeit a couple of defeats in there. But for me, I think they need that news. There's no point going out and getting someone now and making the wrong decision, especially with the recruitment team not firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I think he's spot on, Justin. He's also very handsome, isn't he? Which is always a bonus in our books. Yeah, Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you say there, Justin. He's done all right so far, hasn't he? Swansea aren't in any serious danger of going down, so there's very little risk. And as we've said before, it's basically an audition for the job for him. And if it turns out to be great, then brilliant. Give him the permanent job. If not, we'll move on, pretend it never happened. And it's also got to be mentioned, Swansea have just appointed a new chief exec, so they may as well keep Sheehan in charge while they get their ducks in a row there. Well, Sheehan is reportedly going to be joined by a familiar face at Swansea for the remainder of the season. Only Swans say former Huddersfield boss Mark Fotheringham has agreed to move there as a coach. Oh boy, this brings back some bad memories, doesn't it, Justin? If anyone isn't aware of Mark Fotheringham, maybe you've only just started listening to the podcast this season. He might be a good coach, Justin, but as a manager, this guy was an absolute clown.
Yeah, it didn't go very well at Huddersfield, did it? To be really, really polite. I'm trying to be really, really not political about this, but just very balanced with it.
Put it this way, Justin, it's never good when your manager is providing weekly content for us with his comments before and after games, is it?
Yeah, I think that's it. Like some of his quotes were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Not in a good way either. They were just fantastic to just dissect. But like I said, or like you said, actually, he's clearly a highly rated coach. Because he's had some decent jobs as a coach. It's just not materialised for him as a manager. So I think him going in, he's got experience. He's got experience in the Championship. They're positives. Also, importantly, and you missed this out. This bothers me. Richard Stearman is joining the coaching staff.
Oh, great! How could I possibly miss that?
Cool hero, Richard Stearman. Come on.
Going back to Fotheringham. As long as you keep a microphone away from him, I'm sure he's a really, really good coach. Although, if we don't get a microphone near him, then we miss out on that incredible accent, which has a mix of German, Scottish, New York for some reason. Yeah, it's an absolutely insane
There was a bit
accent.
Of New York gangster in there as well, like old 1920s New York gangster, which is
really, really good stuff. Really good stuff. If you haven't seen that before, make sure you search that out. Stoke City, Justin, they've appointed a new head of recruitment. Ian Torrance joins them from Como in Italy. He was previously chief scout at Southampton. Now, we wouldn't usually give much airtime to something like a new head of recruitment, but this is Stoke's third in less than a year. And there haven't been many success stories from Stoke's recruitment over the years, has there, Justin? So good luck, Ian.
God, so much to say about this. There's so little time and probably so little interest from the listeners. But actually, I think this is a really important almost stage for Stoke again, because we've been in this scenario before with Stoke, new head of recruitment, things looking good, blah, blah, blah. And then in 3 months' time, you find out that they lost their job and it's not gone very well or whatever. They get a summer transfer window to really prove themselves, and they leave after a little bit. I don't think it's down to the head of recruitment. Don't think it's down to the managers. I think it's the people who are putting these people in charge. That's the problem. If you're going through a high turnover of staff, then unfortunately the management of the club or the business or whatever scenario you're in, that's where the problem lies. Good luck, Ian Torrance. Hopefully, I mean, it's going from Como to Staffordshire is a big move in itself, isn't it?
That's a transition, isn't it? You're absolutely right, Justin. Stoke have a fantastic record of taking a successful manager, player, or even a backroom member of staff like this and completely pounding their career into the dirt. No one does it better like Stoke City, do they? And that's part of the reason why they are appointing their third head of recruitment in the space of 12 months. I mean, Torrance did very well at Southampton over 13 years, so maybe it wasn't as well towards the end, actually, but still, 13 years at Southampton's not a bad stretch. And for those who don't know, Como are very much the new big spenders on the block over in Italy, aren't they? Yeah. So it's a big compliment to him that they headhunted him, and it looks like he's effectively just been given a blank check to sign various big names there. The fact he's left after less than a year, don't know whether that means he's been deemed successful or not at Como. What I do know is Stoke's recruitment has been a mess for years and has arguably been the big thing holding them back. So he's got a big job in his hands. Still, every chance he's doing that job in League One. So, Yeah, we'll see. Just quickly, actually, Justin, while we're on Stoke, this is one of those shower thoughts that I had the other day, randomly. But
Okay, on Stoke.
Yeah, well, of course. What else would you be thinking about in the shower? I think relegation might actually be a good thing for Stoke City.
No.
Now, hear me out here. Hear me out. I imagine everyone involved with Stoke would much prefer not to go down. But we've seen with Birmingham, it might actually be a benefit in the long term because Stoke have some of the richest owners in the country, right? Not just in the Championship, in the country. But they can't spend any money because of profit and sustainability. And as Birmingham have pretty much shown everyone in League One, the financial rules are a lot more relaxed down there. So I think if Stoke go down, it might actually be what they need. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Justin, whether these are just the ramblings of a madman, but just something that popped into my head.
Just keep them in the shower. Keep them in the shower. I disagree entirely. I don't think relegation is good for any team. Birmingham took a huge risk, and it is paying off, but it doesn't always pay off. Sunderland spent several years in League One. Sheffield United did. Nottingham Forest did all those years ago. Leeds did.
I feel like it's a different landscape now.
It is a different landscape. You are right, but money doesn't mean you get out of it. You need campaigners. You need players who have had experience of League One to get out of it. I think that's a really important blend to mix in. I don't think finances do play a huge role, but I don't think it's part of the entire formula for bouncing back out. And also, you're asking a Stoke team, a Stoke club, to make decisions, to make good decisions after making years of bad decisions. The trend there with Stoke is they're really bad at decision making, and that's unfortunately put them in this position now. It doesn't magically improve because they've just been down to League One because they can now spend freely. I'd worry actually more that the fact that they could spend more, be like Birmingham, and still buy the wrong players, as they have been doing since they were relegated from the Premier League.
It'd be very Stoke, that, wouldn't it, if that were to happen. Yeah, I know what you mean, and I know it sounds mad saying it, but unfortunately this is the sorry state of English football, where, as we've mentioned very recently, there seems to be the risk of a big gap going between the Championship and League One, similar to that of the Premier League and the Championship. So yeah, while obviously Stoke don't want to get relegated this season, it wouldn't at all surprise me if this is actually a good thing in the long term for Stoke, because it could be the perfect opportunity to freshen up their squad. And I think it's much more likely, actually, that if they do go down, they're in a much better position in a couple of seasons' time than they would be if they stayed up for the next couple of seasons. I know it's mad, Justin. I know it's absolutely mad, but Birmingham City have shown it's very feasible for a team to go down to League One and actually be in a much stronger position. Because, I mean, Birmingham they were in a very similar position to Stoke, weren't they, where they were hovering above the relegation zone for several years and look like they'll be coming back up to the Championship next season in a very healthy state. So, yeah. I don't think it's as mad as it may sound when I initially made that statement, put it that way, Justin. And we'll finish off with some mad news in itself, because Millwall have become the first football club in Britain to launch their own mobile network. Millwall Mobile. How long did it take you to come up with that one, guys? We'll have 99.9% coverage and is available from just £10 a month. There are 3 packages to choose from, with normal SIMs and eSIMs available, as well as the option to cancel at any time. Supporters will also be able to receive special discounts and offers with exclusive rewards. Sounds all right, Justin? I might go with them instead of my current provider, who seem intent on just ruining my life. But yeah, there's still a bit odd, isn't it?
It's quirky because obviously Millwall are the first to do it. I actually think it's quite an interesting innovation from a business side of things, because Millwall
you're making this way too serious.
No, I'm not, because Millwall, that's another bit of extra income. But just to dumb it down, if you like, I've seen some of the jokes on Twitter and they are incredible.
They are. Please. First British football club to launch their own mobile network. You'll never sing that.
Yeah. Oh, but please leave your message after the mill. That's one. There's another one there. I just hope they pay for their bill. My favourite actually was Hull City should launch their own network, and then it could be you're getting called by the Tigers.
Yes, very good. Very good.
These are all stolen from Twitter. I apologise.
Yes, that's absolutely fine. We've got no signal. We don't care. Was another one I saw on Twitter. Yeah, there's plenty of puns from this, but it's an interesting one. I don't know how this came about, but hopefully it goes well for Millwall. Someone said they must be spending the Remain Essa money in a very different way to most clubs. But hopefully it works out for them. And there aren't any problems when it comes to your bills. But there we go, ladies and gents. This has been a news roundup of everything cracking off across the Championship. What a strange week it's been. But we are now rapidly approaching the business end of the season, ladies and gents, of course. And we'll be looking ahead to that tomorrow with the preview show brought to you by SBK. So we look forward to seeing you then for that. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.